Darkwing Dad here. I hope you enjoyed my little rendition of Star-Lord. That's going to be the best impression that you get from me, but hey, it wasn't too bad. Anyways, today we're going to be going over a recent 3D build that I did. I did the orb with the Power Stone. As seen in Guardians of the Galaxy, also in Endgame with their little flashback there. I've got some cool tips and tricks here that will help you get little intricate areas nice and smooth without doing too much sanding. We're going to be using some tricks like resin, intricate sanding, things like that. So we're going to get everything rolling. First thing I'm going to do is show you some tips I used on the file to get it prepped before printing, and then we'll go into post-processing, so check it out. All right, so starting with the file, and because I know you guys love staring at my screen oh so much, this is the file that I used. It was a free file on What Else Thingiverse. File came out in 2017. All you have to do in this top search box here is just basically type in Guardians of the Galaxy Orb. This one's labeled Guardians of the Galaxy Infinity Orb. If you can't find it, leave me a comment. I'll link it. I'm probably not going to go through putting all the links of everything in here. If somebody requests it, I'll comment and link it. If not, there's the title, Guardians of the Galaxy Infinity Orb Crystal. So there are numerous files out there that you can get. There's probably about 4 or 5 different makes. The reason why I chose this one is because it already had the crystal that you can print. So that's why I went with this one. Some of the other ones did not have this piece, and I was like, how am I going to replicate that? And then I found this one. Cool, it's already there, easy peasy. Basically, going over the files, you have 6 files, although one of them's repeated, so it's really only 5. But basically, you've got the crystal, you have this orb outer rim piece, you have the interior piece, you have another orb rim, which you don't need. And then you have the orb exterior. So I actually lied, and there's actually 4 pieces, because basically with the outer piece here, you just print that twice. It's literally the same exact piece. So there's nothing different about it. It's just, yeah, you just print it twice. And then the same thing with the interior piece. You just print that twice, and they both fit in there nice and easy. So the way this piece is set up, and this is just a recommendation. So the orb itself, so the outside of the orb, it's actually 2 pieces. And the reason why they do that is because this interior piece, if you put it on without this outer rim, it'll just kind of slide out. This opening here is actually larger, so that can slide in, and then what they want you to do is take this piece here and put that on there to keep it in place. That's all fine and dandy. However, to try to put body filler on all this would be like impossible, and you'd have a very harsh line, and it would be really hard to sand and everything. So what I recommend doing, and what I did, is you basically take these 2 pieces here, and you're just going to combine them into one. So what you basically have to do is just get it kind of lined up, and I'll ungroup this for you so you can see. So here are both pieces here. Okay, my camera's freaking out right now. Hang on. All right, there we go. You basically just get this top piece lined up, and you just lower it down until it clicks in place. Boom. And then you just group them together. So just select both of these, group them together. Boom, it's one piece. There's no seam. You don't have to worry about messing with body filler or anything like that. You're good to go. Now, what you'll have to do with this piece here is just scale it to 99%, and then just put some glue in it. It'll hold in place perfectly fine. I used like a super glue. You can do hot glue if you want. I just did super glue that way. It wasn't too bad, so I just kind of loaded it up and did that. So this was merged as one piece, because like I said, if you try to sand this, I mean, it would be very hard to try to get that totally smooth, like even if you're loading like body filler or something on there. So basically all I did was I merged these pieces together, so it was one solid piece. Scaled this to 99%. I did sand a little bit on the outside, but it slid right in and it was perfect. So I recommend doing that for the file versus trying to do those 2 pieces. it's just going to be a hassle trying to sand and smooth out that body filler. So I definitely recommend to do that. And I used Windows 3D Builder, very easy program, free program. I've got a couple videos on it, how to split and merge parts if you need other I guess information, but very easy. Just open both parts, get them lined up, drop it in, group them together, you're good to go. So once you have all that set up, you can basically go ahead and print your pieces. So I'm going to kind of readjust the camera and just let you know how everything printed. All right, so when it came time to print the orb, I mean, it was pretty straightforward. It's nothing too crazy. I had them facing down. It printed some supports on the inside. I did a 0.2 layer height. I was going to go with something a little bit higher, but I really wanted to kind of just get this done in a day or two. Luckily I was. And I mean, overall, it came out really good. Maybe going to a 0.12, would it be better? Maybe just a little bit, but I feel like the process that I did, it gives it a pretty good look. It is an orb. It's not meant to be perfect. I probably will revisit this project though and change a couple things as far as paint schemes and the way I process it, but overall this was a really good way. But I'll give you some tips of maybe what I could have done here to make it look a little bit better. But overall, after it was printed, the first thing that I did before I got into messing or adding fillers or resins or anything, that was basically just sanded. One thing with anything that is orb shaped is you don't want to take any sort of flat object and sand it, okay? Because if we take something that's flat, I'll just use this as an example. If we take something and try to sand it like this, you're basically gonna flatten off that area. We don't want to do that, okay? We want to keep that natural curvature. However, if you take your hand isn't completely round, okay? It's still gonna have high and low spots. Now, using your hand is better than using something straight. What I recommend to do is get something like this, which is basically a Velcro interface pad. Okay, so this actually goes on sanders and things like that to give you a little bit of squish. But what I do is I take some of my Velcro sandpaper that's left over from my detail sander and I stick it right on. And you could get pieces of sandpaper that cover the whole thing. However, when I hold it, I like to kind of like take my thumb and then take my finger here. That's why I have this on here. And that kind of holds it in place, okay? So, and then you basically just sand it, okay? Obviously, I'm not going to sand it now because it's painted and it's done. But to give you an idea, and then this helps keep the contour. You still have that curve of your hand, but you have this foam interface here that's just gonna naturally kind of flow with the orb. It's going to absorb pressure points, but it's also going to fill areas that you're not putting enough pressure on. So it's going to keep that curve. So I highly recommend getting something like this. Not really a sanding sponge, because you have to understand that's smaller and it's not going to curve as much. This is a big 5-inch pad that it's nice. It's not too thick. It's nice and flexible. You get a sanding sponge, they're about that thick, and it's not going to bend as much. This is nice and bendy, and you don't even have to use Velcro ones. What I used to do on some of these older ones is I would actually wrap sandpaper around and hot glue it in place. I know that sounds weird, but it actually works really well. But if you have any of these just Velcro, double-sided Velcro reinforced pieces of sandpaper, they stick right on there. They're not going to go anywhere. Works great. So yes, I did sand before I got into putting any sort of fillers or resins on, just because you're always going to have those little bit of PLA lines. I didn't get anything too crazy. All I did was I just did a basic sand of 180, and this is actually 240. So I did do, 2 passes over everything. And I did this whole piece here, basically the main areas that you're gonna see. So I did this, and then here, I couldn't really go crazy. I did very, very faint, because you can see, the definite, you could easily take all those down. So that I actually did, with the tip of my finger, and I actually only did 220. I didn't do 180, but I just very lightly just kind of brushed over that because I really didn't want to wither any of those down. If you get in really close, you can kind of see that there's some very, very faint lines in there, but after we put the resin and everything else on, it actually smoothed it out really good. So speaking of resin, so it's a very hot topic. So a lot of people, they get SLA resin, something like this right here. Obviously I got this guy running, so I got lots of this stuff now. So there's a lot of misconceptions about resin, and people think that you can just load it on and it's gonna smooth everything out and fill it in. And yes and no. So first, when you print something in PLA, it has kind of like a minor, it's got like a little coating to it, okay? So you have to scuff that. I mentioned it before in other videos. You have to scuff that so the filler primer has something to grab onto. It's the same thing with resin. So even if you're applying resin, you still want to do some sort of a scuff so that resin has something to kind of absorb into. But also you're knocking down those PLA lines, and that's why I did that. So just a nice scuff, and then you put your resin on. Now when you're messing around with SLA resin, understand that you do want to take some precaution, okay? So you got to be wearing some kind of gloves, okay? Latex, nitrile, whatever gloves you want to wear, you need to have, you got to have some sort of gloves on. So definitely want to wear some gloves, okay? So you got your gloves, and all you really want to do is have a small brush, whether it be one of those little foam brushes or just like a small paintbrush. You don't want to put it on heavy, okay? So really, anytime that you're applying resin, you really don't want to do it super heavy, especially if you're doing anything with any sort of definition, because that resin can go in here, fill all this in, and you'll lose all that definition. It's kind of just like painting. You want to do a couple light coats, okay? And realistically, in between those coats, you do want to sand. So when I did it, I would do, you know, half of this, and I would apply resin, again, very lightly, because I didn't want to get it too deep in these cracks and not be able to clean it out or, you know, kind of neutralize it, and I didn't want it to reject the filler. So very light, cured it, washed it in isopropyl alcohol, cleaned it with water, cured it again, and then basically did a very light sand, and then would do the other thing to the other side. And I repeated that process twice, and like I said, it smoothed these out, this outer edge, very good. Now you are going to need, like I said, you know, proper protection gloves for the SLA resin. You also need a curing light, basically something like this. This is a little cure station. I'm not going to plug this in and turn it on because it can damage your eyes, but this is 410 nanometers, so I believe most resins need at least 400. The majority of SLA resins, using any cubic resin, that needs 405, so you are going to need a curing light. You're also going to need some bigger containers to both clean with isopropyl and with water. I'll do a video on that. This is just a quick kind of tutorial to kind of break it down. So what I did is, after I kind of sanded it, I started with the piece like this, and I didn't even use a big brush, and I'll explain why. And I just very gently just kind of combed it over all of this very lightly. The reason why you don't want to load this on is, you see all these pores in the orb, just like the PLA has like a fine coating on it. If you've ever tried to just paint PLA, like put primer on PLA without sanding it, it can reject it. You might notice wrinkles, you might notice cracking, and that's because it has a coating on it and it's rejecting the primer. Same thing's gonna happen with the resin. If you've ever messed with any sort of epoxy or any sort of fiberglass resin and you've tried to put primer over it, you'll probably notice it cracks because it's rejecting the primer. So I didn't go super heavy or at all in a lot of these areas, because the last thing I wanted was to get primer in there and have it rejected. And ultimately, if you don't get that off, even if you wash it with isopropyl or denaturated alcohol, if that coating is on there and you can't scuff it, it's never gonna accept any sort of primer, which is never gonna, if it's not prime, it's not gonna accept paint. So I really did not mess with these inner areas. So if you kind of look, I mean, you can faintly see there's still some PLA lines within here. I thought maybe I could take a Q-tip and kind of go in there and scuff it, but looking at it, I mean, some of these were so small, I just didn't want to risk it. So I just very lightly put some resin on this outer shell here, okay? And then I cured it, I washed it, did the other side, and then I sanded it, okay? And I was able to get in here a little bit, and I mean, it was kind of a pain, and I took sandpaper, and I was getting in there trying to scuff it and everything, and I actually used etching primer first, okay? Etching primer is for max adhesion. Etching primer is actually for metal. So if you're not gonna sand PLA and you're gonna prime it, you gotta use an etching or a sealer primer. It's the best thing to do. It's gonna work a lot better than just your typical filler primer, okay? You put filler primer on here, you're gonna run into adhesion issues, okay? So I did try to scuff this up as best as I could. I used some of my detail sticks and things like that to get in there. It worked a little bit, but I just did numerous coats. I did about 3 coats of etching primer, and it actually worked out really good. Same thing with all this. I just used the etching primer first. It held and it stuck, so it was good to go. So after I did all that, I had all that etching primer on there. I didn't really need to sand it because it was in all these intricate areas, it was really hard. So then I basically went to my filler primer. So my filler primer of choice is and always will be Bondo filler primer. And I did put it on a little bit heavy to try to fill in some of these areas. And again, you can see it's not perfect. It's a very hard piece. Ultimately, this is something that I'm gonna do in resin. But I just wanted to mess around with it to see how good I could get it in using resin to fill this in. So, you know, I was a little bit apprehensive on putting the resin in some of these areas because I wasn't sure. I didn't want it to reject the paint. So I will try to do it in resin and hopefully get something a little bit better. But this piece does look pretty cool. But realistically, after I did the filler primer, let it sit for about 6 hours. The next day, painted everything and just started painting everything. So I used my Rust-Oleum dark metal. So I used the dark metal on here. And then on the front, I used a gold, a Krylon gold for the insert. And basically just let them sit for about 6 hours and then just kind of put them together, glued them together. It was good to go. So this piece went on first. I put some glue in there, slid that in. It was good to go. Now, with this piece, like I said, I used a small little LED light, and I don't know if you could tell. I'll just twist this off. This is just a small little LED light. So I printed the stone and then just glued this on top of where the light is. I painted this gold so the light doesn't really shine through on the out, and it works pretty on the outside, and it works pretty good. So you can see that there's the batteries falling out. The batteries are in there, the CR batteries. This is the bottom of the LED housing, and then the 2 batteries just load in there. And then basically anytime I want to turn it on, I just twist it and it makes a contact. So we've got the batteries in there now, and actually here the LED just popped out, so you can see that. So there's the LED, and there's where it goes through into the, it just lines right up. So that's how it lights up. So then all I do is basically take this and just twist it So you just twist it and tighten it when you want it on. And it's not the greatest way, but you just little quarter of a turn to the left, it shuts off, turn it to the right, it turns on. And I think it's pretty cool. It's nice and easy. There's nothing wireless. There's nothing where you have to turn it on and off. Well, there is, you're turning it, but you know, there's no button somewhere that takes away from the eccentricity of the orb of the stone. And that's really just it. So I just kind of used that little light because I thought it was cool. It's just a purple LED in there, and it works out really good for me. So after that was all together, I basically just glued everything together, and that's basically the Power Stone. And it looks like that, and then you just kind of open it, and it has 2 parts. And my main objective was to try to get the 2 front parts looking really good, because that's what's going to be on display. I wasn't overly concerned about the back pieces, although I would like to touch it up in the future. I may try to fill this in with some black and paint it by hand, but that's really going to be a project for another day. But like I said, I used a couple of different things here. Not only did I use SLA resin, but I sanded prior, I sanded after, and I used a lacquer-based filler primer in Bondo, which is an absolutely fantastic filler primer, if not one of the best out there. So kind of a culmination of all 3 of those things: sanding, resin, and filler primer. And overall came out with a piece that that is pretty good, pretty cool. I guess you could say different in its own aspect. Now, again, if I ever revisit this or do this again, I'll probably have something with a magnet. This was literally just like a 1.5-day project, was just trying to do it really, really quick. Also, probably what I'll do is I'll probably do like a rub and buff, where I'll probably paint this whole thing black, and then just on these outers do the silver or the gray or something, and then just kind of rub it off to kind of give it that definition in here. I don't think it looks bad, but I do think it can look better. So again, this is just kind of like the first first dry run, so to speak, on this orb piece. But there will be a lot more, you know, coming, different techniques and different videos for you guys to kind of help you. But just wanted to show this because it's a very intricate piece with a lot of definition, and like I said, using that trifecta of sanding, proper amounts of SLA resin, then proper amounts of body fluid. The key thing is not just loading it on. We're not just loading this on or dumping resin on it. That's not the right way to do it. Very light coats, very sanding. Obviously, if you want these pieces to look good, it's going to take time. It's not something that you snap your fingers and it just instantly looks like this. You know, like I said, something that I most likely will revisit in the future, but for now I think it looks pretty cool, and hopefully these tips here that I've gone over helped you. If you found this video helpful, give me a big thumbs up, and if you like everything that you're seeing, why don't you go ahead and click that subscribe button. If you're already subscribed, thank you so much. Don't forget to click that notification bell so you will be notified when new videos come up. I'm still working on the suit, still working on Vader, still got things with my suit, the motorized faceplate, and all different things that I'm working on. So the content is coming. It's just getting it done and edited and getting it out there for you. If there's a certain video you'd like to see, if there's something that I've covered maybe in the past, and you'd like a revamped, new edited version of the video, just leave me a comment. I do have a lot of old footage that I can just kind of, you know, re-edit and put out there for you, or just shoot a new video, because like I said, I'm usually working on some sort of project, and I can just kind of do a tutorial like this and explain what I did. If there's anything you'd like to see, leave me a comment so I can work on that video for you. Again, this channel is for you guys and to help you. I'm just here along for the ride. But anyways, guys, that's it. I want to thank you all for watching. Again, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, anything like that, leave me a comment. I will definitely reply. I love talking to each and every one of you. I love seeing the success of your projects and how my tutorials are helping you guys. So keep me in the loop, guys. Let me know how everything's doing, and you can always email me right there if you have any questions that you don't want to comment on YouTube, or you're not on Facebook or anything like that. Just shoot me an email and I will be sure to reply back if you need help or tips or just feedback. Like I said, anything. That's it for now, guys. I'm going to start working on the next video. Don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be coming at you soon. So until next time, guys, I'll see you then. Later.